Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for another very special edition of WOWSA Live with our host, Ned Denison. Ned?
Hello, everyone. I'm the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. We're going to honor today one of our organizations called Varne Ridge. I have with me honoree Sally Minty-Gravett, and I've got Otto Thaning from South Africa, who I believe is the oldest man to have swum the channel. But we'll have that conversation in a few years, Otto. So first of all, right behind Steve Munatonis is a picture of David and Evelyn, the proprietors of Varne Ridge. They poured their hearts and souls into loving and caring for channel swimmers for a decade or more. Honoree David Udevin and Beth Udevin on the executive committee, I think, were their first channel swimmers. And one of the things that they do that's quite unusual is they put plaques up for their successful swimmers. Steve will give a vision of these in a second. We were expecting one other person to join us that's having technical difficulties. So let me just start by giving you my first impressions of Varne, and then I'll hand over to the others. I went to Varne Ridge in 2005. I didn't really know what I was doing. We rented a caravan, and these wonderful people, David and Evelyn, just couldn't have been nicer. We didn't really have a mechanism to feed. We didn't really know what we're doing, and they just swept us up and loved us to pieces. I was unsuccessful on that first trip, and I went back 60 days later, I believe it was, to complete the channel. Part of my motivation of going back to the channel was to get my name on the wall of Varne Ridge. It was something absolutely focused in my mind. It may sound silly, but it was a huge, huge part of what motivated me to go back. I've since gone back 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. Always got a big hug from Evelyn, and unfortunately, the last time I went to see David was when he had his funeral. He passed away a couple of years ago. Varne Ridge has now the final stages of being sold, so it's less of a mecca right now for channel swimmers this year. But for hundreds and hundreds of channel swimmers around the world, it really is in many ways a hall of fame. There are at least 200 of those plaques on the wall. And I'll ask Sally in a minute, but when I walk around, I probably know at least 160 of them by email, and I probably know at least 100 of them by buying a pint or shaking hands or giving them a hug. So Sally, let's start with you. When was the first time you went to Varne Ridge, and what was your impression?
Well, I first met Evelyn when I was helping arrange Frida's 70th birthday on a ship. You may remember that. But I'd stayed with them in 2008, and I hadn't stayed with them before, but I loved the idea of staying up there. So in 2008, I stayed there for a kids Australian and Jersey girl team relay that we'd organized with an Australian swimmer. And so we went there in August, and it was also the year of Dee's Channel Swim. And we stayed there with the girls, and the Australians had one caravan, and we stayed in the next caravan, and we had the best time. Evelyn and David were amazing. So I think I have plaques with my names on 3 or 4 times up there for various relay teams and things. So yeah, on.
We can still hear you.
Okay, sorry. And then, so I then used to go and visit David and Evelyn all the time. And then I stayed there for 2 more relays, and then I stayed there for my iconic 2-way where we stayed in one of the cottages where Otto stayed in, actually. So, and then I've always visited David and Evelyn up there. We used to go in there for the dinner. We go and say hello, and it's beautiful walking around looking at all those amazing plaques. They're very emotional to look at.
And Otto, what's been your history at Varne Ridge?
Mine was really being introduced to David and Evelyn. It was mainly through Tracy Clark and also Roger Finch, who had become very close friends and worked very intimately with them by staying there and also helping swimmers. I was there in 2014, which was the time that I swam as the old man. And I spent a tremendous amount of time with them. And my very first attempt to swim the English Channel was 1992, and that was with Lewis Pugh. And Lewis Pugh actually didn't stay there. He stayed in the hotel that I spoke about. He was successful. I wasn't on that particular attempt. The following year, I had sat and watched the whole of my so-called period being blown away. I didn't even get in the water. So I had to come back in 1994, and there I was successful, but I did spend time with Evelyn and David whenever we could, simply because we had become quite a sort of team of people. And then obviously the most recent time, we did spend a lot of time there. And that the passion about it was that the Varne Ridge swim camp, which was started primarily by Tracy Clark, I was invited to talk on some of the subjects that I find interesting in this cold water swimming. And it grew from there. So every year there were people staying there as a result of the Varne Ridge camps, as well as the involvement. And, you know, David and Evelyn were absolutely, they became like parents to all the people who stayed there. And I think that's one of the reasons why the plaques became so important. And I so understand, Ned, the feeling that your real aim was to get your name on that plaque. I think it's part of this wonderful brotherhood of people who are mad enough to want to swim across to France. And the way it has developed, it's taken away the egos, it's taken away the personal, shall we say, dominance. It's made it into a real brethren, a real brotherhood, as I used the word. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think Evelyn and David were very responsible for that.
Yeah, a big Varne Ridge family, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sally, do you have a story about coming back and seeing your flag up on the flagpole?
Yeah, I have several actually, because I was there with Prabhat Kohli as well. So when we came back after Prabhat's swim, there was the Indian flag up there, and then when I did my two-way, we had the Jersey flag up and the UK flag. And yeah, they ring the bell, you know, it's all a nice little ceremony, and they make it very special. Yeah, it's lovely.
And I think if you come back sometime other than 3 o'clock in the morning, everybody in the caravan that has anything to do with channel swimming, and people who don't have anything to do with channel swimming, pour out of these caravans. You're standing on this small stone bench. The flag is up. There's a round of applause, and these are the people that you've been nervous with for the past few days or longer.
And you get those lovely banners on your caravan saying congratulations. They're really nice too. It was a lovely place to stay. It really was.
I have a story from one of the Cork trips over. We had 3 swimmers scheduled for the end of September. We had 16-year-old Owen O'Keefe. We had Lisa Cummings, who was trying to do a two-way, never having done a one-way. And we had Sylvain Esturard from France, but he was living in Cork. It was his first time in the channel. Some of you may remember that he went back later and did butterfly, as you would. Yeah. And the 3 of them were there for a full 2 weeks. It was, if they missed this window, that was it for the year. The nerves were quite high. There was an Icelandic team there that couldn't swim. And I remember saying to David and Evelyn, hey, you never had the party for me, because I got back at 3 o'clock in the morning and left for the airport at 6 in the morning. So within a few hours, they had organized a massive barbecue for everybody at Varne Ridge. And for 2 hours, everybody forgot about the weather.
Yeah.
And just, and I tried to give them some money for the barbecue, because I was kind of joking them, kidding them, and they were like, "No, great idea." And it just, everybody relaxed for a few minutes.
They had that amazing knack to take your mind off all the stress that was building up, you know, and help celebrate after when you were successful. And helped commiserate, but in a positive way if you didn't make it. But they were everybody's mum and dad. And I know Tracy still calls Evelyn her swim mum. But yeah, they were amazing. I was there that year, Ned. That was the year of Frida's 70th when Lisa did her two-way, because she finished and then we went out on our works relay. So yeah, it was the same time. The weather was atrocious. Oh, lost you.
Yeah, I think as well that for everybody that stayed at Varne, the successful swimmers and often the unsuccessful swimmers, didn't matter whether it was CSA or CSPF. No one cared. Didn't really matter at all. But David and Evelyn, and although we may call her swim mom, an incredibly glamorous lady of indeterminate years. They would end up at the Dover dinners, and I think there was a queue of people to hug Evelyn and shake David's hand at the bar, before the bar, after the bar, at the dinner, and they really made everybody feel feel like part of their family.
They did. Amazing.
Sally, how many of your Jersey swimmers over the years would have been there?
I've been there for a few solos now as well, so probably I'm going to say 20 maybe, but relay teams and solos and crew, combination maybe, I would say, over the years.
And Otto, how many times in your various visits to Dover did you end up over at Varne Ridge for a drink or a hello?
Every single time. And I was there for a long time, which I was on one occasion. I think it was nearly 10 days, every single day. And it was like coming home to home on each and every one of those occasions. Remarkable, really, really remarkable.
Yeah, you feel at home as soon as you arrive, don't you? I remember just walking in and thinking, oh, here we are, we're back again. It's nice.
Yeah, yeah.
So in the old days in Cork, we used to have an annual channel dinner as it was taking off. And one year, David and Evelyn came to join us along with the Udovins, which was very quite special. And we also had Dave White and his partner Joan over. When Steve Munatonis held the WOWSA conference together with the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame celebrations in Cork, they came over, and I distinctly remember introducing them from the podium. And I said, well, for some of you, these are two people that own a caravan park in Dover. I said, but what you don't understand is we tallied up the numbers, and this was several years ago. At that point, we had spent nearly 600 nights with them.
Wow.
And I said, this is more than just two people from Dover. This is our family. 600 nights is a lot of nights.
It is.
And they simply knew everybody in town. One of the things that always amused me is that the channel swimmers would leave a bunch of stuff there, because everyone would overpack, and there would be Cliff bars and extra containers of Maxim,
peaches, drinks bottles, cartons, boxes. Everything was there for everybody to use. It was great.
And the next person would come in and they would have a panic that they were supposed to get sliced peaches or something. And David or Evelyn would disappear and they'd come back with this giant box of goodies like Christmas Day.
Yeah. Amazing.
I think the other one, Sally, and you probably have memories of this, is when you stayed in a hotel in Dover, it was difficult because if particularly a relay team or a big crew, where did you meet? Well, you kind of met in the pub or down in the lounge of the hotel, and it kind of lacked atmosphere.
Yes.
But the small caravans in Dover had an area with a television and a kitchen and a bunch of seats, and the number of times that we were cooking spaghetti in those caravans.
Yeah. Yeah. So it just made you feel very comfortable and home, and you could sleep and you could eat what you wanted. You didn't have to go out all the time, and you could just make your own things. I mean, the cottages they had there were lovely as well. I mean, I've stayed in the cottage a couple of times, well, 3 times now, actually, 3 or 4 times. So yeah, they were lovely too.
And Otto, Tracy and Roger have really done a great job with that Varne Ridge camp. Give us a story or two about the whole gang meeting up there, and laughter or tears or congratulations after a 6-hour swim in a lumpy old harbor.
Well, it was always great. I mean, whenever you sit around a fire or you sit in a group of people, there are always stories. But I must steal one little bit of this discussion about the thing that happened to me in the last swim, which was the one we were referring to, 2014. My swim was rather odd because I was supposed to leave. It happened on the night of Friday, and I was supposed to be swimming on Saturday. And the person who was swimming on Friday apparently didn't last very long. So Mike Oram, who was my pilot, phoned me up and said, listen, can you get to the marina within an hour? Because the boat is ready. The person's only swum for an hour, and we can go immediately. So it was like a real rushed job. And we did it, and we did it with the help of all the people, particularly Roger and Tracy. And the swim, of course, started late. We were supposed to be aiming for 6 in the morning, and I only got sort of waterborne at about 10, which I then knew I would be, if I was successful, landing in the middle of the night. And the swim was just wonderful. It was just one of those things that happens, and you can't afterwards explain why and how and who. But when it got to the stage where we were getting near to the end, at that stage I was actually feeling quite reasonable, but I didn't know whether I was thinking normally or not. And the one thing that I had noticed in getting ready for the swim, there was no dinghy or skiff, as we call it, rubber duck on Mike's boat. And at the stage where things were starting to happen, Mike Oram leaned down and said, Otto, we're going to put, and then he said something which I couldn't hear. And I said, fine, I'm just going to swim. And what he actually had said, he was going to put up a large searchlight, which was stuck onto the mast of the boat. And it was a very massive searchlight. I didn't realize until I saw them putting it up as I was swimming. And then Roger was allowed to swim with me. And Mike Oram again says, you know, he's very short in his commands. He just said, swim down the light. And it was like a tunnel of light going down towards the beach. And we swam all the way down. And after a while, suddenly I could see the bottom. And then I actually turned to Roger and I said, you know, I think when I finish this damn thing, we're nearly at the end. And eventually I got up. And as you well know, you stand on stone, so it's not a particularly good footing. And I stuck my arms out, as I'm showing at the moment, and waddled in. And then I looked up down this light onto the beach, and there were 2 penguins. And I was very disturbed about that because I thought, well, I'm definitely hallucinating and I've got to make a problem here. So I turned to Roger and I said, Roger, there are 2 penguins over there. And he just said, come on, Otto, get out the water. And I said, but can you see the penguins? And he couldn't see the penguins. And then, of course, the penny dropped for me because what the penguins were the reflection, the shadow from the searchlight behind us of Roger and I standing up in the water.
So the shadow.
So, it was actually extraordinary. So I actually lifted my arm up to be sure, and my penguin lifted his arm up. And Roger then pulled us out. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a Heineken, which he managed to rip the top off, but it didn't open either. It left a little hole. And I then grabbed it and squashed it. And we were suitably dosed. And he gave it to me as a plaque.
Excellent.
From him.
That's a great story.
And I'll never forget the penguins. I forget everything else about the swim. But the penguins, you know, I said to him, there are no penguins in France, are there?
That's actually very funny.
It was very odd. Anyhow, it was great.
For everyone who knows Roger Finch, there's always at least 1 can of beer in his stocks.
At least.
And he had it in a rucksack on his back and pulled it out.
I remember him telling me that, actually.
Yeah. And then the other thing is funny. If you saw that the picture of it, it's dented. And the reason why it's dented, I squashed it because I wanted to pour it over him. And after I'd done that, I said, well, I can't be in too bad a state because I can squash this thing up quite easily with my hands.
Well, the first time I met Roger, and we're digressing a little bit, it was at Varne Ridge, and I was just moving out of their they've got a studio apartment there, right opposite their cottage. And Tracy and Roger were moving in, and I was moving into the bungalow. And I came round to give Tracy some food, a food box of stuff that was left over. And I didn't know, but Roger was in the bathroom, and I was talking to Tracy. I had a pair of my red shorts and a top on, and there I was talking to Tracy, and right behind me, Roger came in from the bathroom and pulled my shorts down. Thanks, Roger. In true Roger style. True Roger style. So yeah, that was really quite funny.
Wonderful.
So I think that everybody that stayed in Varne Ridge has got hundreds of stories. I have one that came to me. Young Sylvan was getting ready to do his swim, and we were all in the briefing in a caravan. And I wasn't on his crew, but I was observing. And so they did all of their talks. And Dan Martin, who Sally will know, he was going to be on Sylvan's crew.
Yeah, I remember.
And they went through everything except one topic. And at the end, I said, what about drugs? And Sylvan said, oh, yeah. He said, I got these today at Boots, the pharmacy, some sort of seasickness tablets or something. And I said, have you ever tried them? And he said, no. And I remember Dan Martin picked them up out of my hand and flicked them. It was the greatest shot ever into the garbage can. Into the bin, and he said, well, you won't be trying them for the first time while I'm crewing for you. And it cut the ice, and everybody started laughing, and we had an absolute tremendous few days with our swimmers.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was a fun place. Good fun place. But life is what you make it. You have fun wherever you are anyway, so.
Listen, we've just about exhausted our time, and this really has been hopefully a tribute to Varne Ridge and David and Evelyn, and hopefully everybody that stayed there that made that community. Before we sign off, Sally, it'd be remiss of me to say condolences again on Charlie's passing, and
thank you.
We really miss his character in our sport.
We gave him the best send off we could by the sea. We threw pebbles in the water. We had his great music playing, made a barbecue, and we had some dancing on St. Catherine's Breakwater, and we had the best send-off we could. So I think we did him proud. But thank you.